Hello, and welcome to Drunk on Tea. This week, after reading the Rogue Trader rulebook, I've been inspired by this classic artwork on the front cover to try and paint a Crimson Fist in the style of Rogue Trader. So the first thing I've done is I've primed the model black, as this will give us an even base coat for the rest of our colours to work from. And first of all, I'm coming in with some Cantor blue, and for this I'm going to paint all of the power armour. Now, working a couple of thin layers, I'm going to build up to a solid colour of Cantor blue all over the power armour to the Space Marine. After the first coat is going to look slightly patchy, so make sure you come back in with a second coat to build up to a solid colour of Cantor blue all over that power armour. Then make sure you work this into all of the recesses of the model so we get that even colour of Cantor blue all over the Space Marine. And after a couple of coats of Cantor blue, you can see we've got an even colour of blue all over the power armour to the Space Marine. Now with some lead belcher, I'm going to come in and paint all of the metallic details on the model. So for this I'm going to paint all of his bolt gun, because in that classic Rogue Trader artwork, he's got a solid silver bolt gun rather than the more modern style of black casing on a bolt gun. Or the second edition, where they had red casing on the bolt gun. I'm also going to pick out the vents on his backpack, as well as any other metallic details on the model. So take your time, try and avoid getting this over any of the blue power armour we've already painted, but just pick out any metallic details with a coat of lead belcher. And after a couple of coats of lead belcher, you can see we've got a solid colour all over his bolt gun and the metallic details on his backpack. And now with some corn red, I'm going to pick out the hands on the model. This will give us those Crimson Fist hands that are the iconic mark of Crimson Fist Space Marines. So I'm going to pick out both his hands with a couple of coats of corn red. Making sure I also pick this part of his hand at the backside of the bolt gun as well. And I'm also going to pick out some detailing on his helmet as well. So I'm picking out this part here on the top, and I'm going to pick out around these side areas here, just giving them a thin line of corn red around the edges. After that corn red's applied, you can see we've picked out the hands and a couple of details with a nice deep crimson colour. And now with some Corvus black, I'm going to pick out any strapping details and any cabling on the model. Being nice and neat, trying to not get this over any of the power arm we've already painted. I'm also going to pick out his belt here going around his waist. And the undersuit to the power armour as well. So just work your way around, pick out all of these ridged undersuit areas with a couple of coats of Corvus black. This will help break up that solid blue colour and add some interest all over the model. There's also some here by his hands. This will help break up and add some distinction between those two colours. And with those details and undersuit picked out, there's only one last base colour left to apply to this model. And that will be some Retributor armour, just on the skull here on his bolt gun. The ones on the artwork don't have any detailing on their bolt gun, but the kit I put together does have this skull, so I'm just picking it out with some Retributor armour. And with that applied, that is all the base colours applied to the model. So the next step is I'm going to start shading. So with some Nuln oil, I'm going to start off by doing a pin shade to all of the recesses on the power armour. So I'm coming in with a nice small brush, applying some Nuln oil around every panel and in every recess all over the power armour. This step will take a while, but just make sure you take your time, work your way around the model, picking out every recess with a thin pin shade of Nuln oil. If you do come in too thick at any point while doing this step, you can come back in with a little bit of Cantor blue and thin those lines back down again. But just take your time, work your way around the model and pick out every recess with a pin shade of Nuln oil. Make sure you catch these parts here on the shoulder pad with a recess shade on the inside, just to add some definition to those shoulder pads. It's also worth taking the time on the helmet to ensure you catch all of the small recesses all over the helmet, as this will be a focal point for the model. And on the backpack, pick out any of these recessed areas as well as the edges to all the panels, all over his backpack. And after that recess shade, I'm going to come in and just do an all over shade of Nuln oil over all of the Corvus black and lead belcher details on the model. So it'll be the undersuit, all of these details here on the backpack, and an all over shade all over his bolt gun. Let's just catch these with a shade of Nuln oil. If you're enjoying the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And after those shades have dried, you can see it's really added some definition and interest all over the Space Marine. And now to start highlighting, first of all I'm coming in with some MacLeod blue, and for this I'm going to do an edge highlight all over the blue parts to the power armour. So once again, take your time at this step and work your way around the model on every edge, every side of every panel and every raised detail. Apply a thin edge highlight of MacLeod blue all over those details on the power armour. So much like the pin shading, this step will take a while, but is really worth it as the end result will really make that armour pop all over the Space Marine. Try and keep your lines nice and thin, but if you do come in too thick at any point, you can come back in with some Cantor blue and cut into those lines to make them thinner again. So just take your time, keep working your way around the model, picking out every panel with a thin edge highlight of MacLeod blue. Now for this model, unlike with my 5 paint challenge models, I am going to do a second highlight into this highlight. So these lines can be a little bit thicker than they would be for just a pure edge highlight. This is what we often call a chunky edge highlight, but still keep those lines nice and thin, but just keep them thick enough so that you can come back in with another colour after and put a line within those lines. Just try and keep them nice and even all over the model, especially focus here on areas like the face to get really nice, smooth, even lines across the edges of every panel. And after that edge highlight's been applied, you can see it's added a little bit of depth to that power armour. But now I'm going to come in with some Altdorf Guard blue. I'm going to apply another edge highlight within all of the ones we just applied. So once again, keep these lines really thin, just catching the edge of all of these panels. So you can still see a little bit of the MacLeod blue on the edges, but we're coming through with Altdorf Guard blue and really catching the very tightest parts of all of these panels. So you'll get two highlight colours, which will really build up to a nice transition and really make those highlights pop and look fantastic all over the model. Once again, just take your time, work your way back around the model, applying a thinner edge highlight of Altdorf Guard blue within all of the lines of MacLeod blue we just applied. With these ones, if you do come in too thick, you can come back in with some Cantor blue and then some MacLeod blue to get those lines looking really neat. So as you can see here, I'm really focusing on just the very edges of all of the panels. So you can see a little bit of MacLeod blue poking out next to the Altdorf Guard blue we're applying. Once again, really take your time, especially on the face. This will be a focal point of the model, so we want to make this as interesting as possible. And after that second edge highlight's been applied, you can see it's really added some strength to those edge highlights and made them pop out even more. And now with some Calgar blue, I'm just going to apply a spot highlight to some of the sharpest points on the armour. So I'm going to apply it to the top of some of these panels, and any sort of sharp 90-degree corners, I'm just applying a thin spot of Calgar blue just to really emphasise those points. So once again, work your way back around the model, and at any sharp points on the power armour or areas you feel need a little bit more definition, just apply a small spot highlight of Calgar blue into these areas. Less is more with these highlights. Don't feel like you have to apply them all over the model, but just pick out some of the sharpest and more pronounced spots and apply a thin spot highlight of Calgar blue to these areas. And with that Calgar blue applied, that is the blue part to the power armour highlighted. So now with some Mephiston red, I'm going to start highlighting the corn red areas. So once again, I'm coming in with a chunky edge highlight all over these hands and details we painted with corn red. So for this, I'm going to catch the back of his hand here, as well as the fingers. I'm going to apply a line over this one here on the top of his helmet and around the details. And with that chunky edge highlight applied, we started building up to that lighter highlight we'll be applying on these areas. And now with some Evil Sun Scarlet, I'm going to apply another edge highlight once again within that Mephiston red we just applied. So keeping this right towards the very edges, so you can see a little bit of the Mephiston red showing through to add some transition to our highlights. So be nice and neat again at this stage, and just put a thin line of Evil Sun Scarlet within all of our lines of Mephiston red. And with that edge highlight applied, we are just going to apply a little spot highlight just to really emphasize some of those red details. So we're coming in with some Wild Rider red, and once again just at the sharpest points I'm going to apply a little spot of Wild Rider red as a spot highlight just to add some interest to those sharp points. So it'll be here at the corners of his hands, the very tips of the fingers, and just the front of this part here on his helmet. And with that Wild Rider red applied, that is all of the power armour highlighted on the model. So now with some Mechanica Standard Grey, I'm going to highlight all of the areas we painted black on the model. So for these details here, I'm picking them out with a thin edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey. Just catching the edges of these details. I'm also going to highlight the belt with a thin edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey as well. And all of the ridges on his undersuit. Just be nice and neat and pick all of these ridges out with a thin line of Mechanica Standard Grey. And with the Mechanica Standard Grey applied, that's all the black details highlighted on the model. So the next step is I'm going to start painting the eye lenses on his helmet. So for this I'm coming in with War Flesh. I'm going to sink a little bit of this into the recesses of his eye lenses. So being nice and neat, trying to not get this over any of the blue we've already painted and highlighted. With those eye lenses picked out. Next I'm coming in with some Warpstone Glow. I'm just going to add a thin line at the very bottom of those eye lenses. It's just a line going from the front to back at the very bottom, both of his eye lenses. And with that applied, it's added a little bit of interest to those eye lenses. So the final step is just to come in with some white scar and apply a tiny spot in the back corner of each of his eye lenses. This will look like a reflection point of light, really make them stand out on the model. And with those eye lenses painted, there's only a couple of details left to paint on the model. So to start off with, I'm coming in with some Stormhose Silver. I'm going to give an edge highlight to all of the areas we painted with Lead Belcher. So that'll be the gun and the details on his backpack. I'm just picking these out with a thin edge highlight of Stormhose Silver and all of the edges to all the panels. And with the silver details applied, the only thing left to highlight now is the little bit of gold detailing on his bolt rifle. So for this I'm coming in with some Liberator Gold. I'm just going to pick out a couple of spots on the skull on his bolt gun. And so that's my attempt at painting a miniature as inspired by the Rogue Trader artwork. As you can see, I've got most of the details correct. This is a different sculpt. I don't have one of those classic first edition Space Marines, unfortunately. I would love to give painting one a go. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below what other classic paint schemes you'd like to see me take on from 1st or 2nd edition 40k. And happy painting!